I'm standing in a supermarket in Tokyo. Before me, 47 varieties of instant coffee. 47. I came here for coffee. Just coffee. But now I'm paralyzed. Which one represents the real me? Which choice will I regret? Which version of myself am I committing to with this decision? I leave with nothing. This isn't a story about coffee, it's a story about freedom and how it's quietly destroying us. My name is Adrian Vale. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent 3 decades studying philosophy while wandering through 36 countries. I've watched the world transform, I've watched freedom multiply, and I've watched people, good, intelligent people, become progressively more miserable in the face of unlimited possibility. Today, we're going to explore something I call the paradox of infinite choice. The strange truth that more freedom often leads to less meaning, more options frequently result in more paralysis, and unlimited possibility can become a prison more confining than any limitation ever was. Our grandparents didn't choose their careers from thousands of possibilities. They didn't swipe through hundreds of potential partners. They didn't curate their identity from infinite lifestyle options. They had constraints, limitations, boundaries. And here's what troubles me. I'm not entirely sure they were less happy. In fact, I'm increasingly convinced they might have had something we've lost, something we traded away in our pursuit of total freedom. They had something we're desperately lacking: clarity, direction, and perhaps most importantly, meaning that came not despite their limitations, but because of them. Let's explore why. In 1943, Jean-Paul Sartre sat in a cafe in occupied Paris and wrote something that would haunt philosophy forever. We are condemned to be free. Condemned. Not blessed. Not gifted. Condemned. Think about that word choice. Sartre understood something profound. Freedom isn't the solution to the human condition. It is the human condition, and it's a burden, not a liberation. Here's what he meant. Unlike a rock or a tree, you have no predetermined essence, no instruction manual, no cosmic purpose handed down from above. You must choose what you become. You must choose what matters. You must choose your own meaning. And you cannot not choose. Even refusing to choose is a choice. Even letting others decide for you is a choice. There is no escape from the responsibility of your own freedom. But Sartre was writing in an era of relative scarcity. He was concerned with metaphysical freedom, the philosophical reality that we must create our own essence. What he couldn't fully anticipate was what would happen when metaphysical freedom collided with practical infinity, when the abstract burden of creating meaning met the concrete reality of 10,000 career paths, unlimited romantic options, and infinite lifestyle possibilities. He gave us the philosophy of radical freedom. We created the technology of radical choice, and the combination is suffocating us. Because here's the cruel irony. Sartre said we must create our own meaning through our choices. But what happens when there are so many choices that we can't commit to any of them? What happens when every choice we make eliminates 10,000 other possibilities? What happens when we're so afraid of choosing wrong that we can't choose at all? We end up in what psychologists call analysis paralysis, and what I call existential quicksand. The more we struggle to find the perfect choice, the deeper we sink into meaninglessness. In 2004, Psychologist Barry Schwartz published The Paradox of Choice. His research revealed something counterintuitive. Beyond a certain point, more options don't increase our satisfaction, they decrease it. He identified two mechanisms at work. First, opportunity costs become overwhelming. Every choice you make means rejecting dozens of alternatives. That rejection creates psychological pain. Second, our expectations escalate. With infinite options, we assume the perfect choice exists. Anything less than perfection feels like failure. The result? We become what Schwartz calls maximizers. People perpetually searching for the optimal choice, never satisfied, always wondering if something better exists just around the corner. Let me give you a contemporary example. Dating apps. You open Tinder, you swipe left, right, left, left, right. Each face appears for 2 seconds before you render judgment. Attractive. Not attractive enough. Interesting. Not interesting enough. Potential. Not enough potential. You're not looking for someone good, you're looking for someone perfect. Because why settle when the next swipe might reveal your soulmate? But here's what's actually happening. You're training yourself to see human beings as consumer products. You're transforming the search for connection into an optimization problem. And optimization problems don't have solutions. They have local maxima that always leave you wondering if you missed the global maximum. You're not dating. You're shopping in a store with infinite inventory and no return policy. And it's making genuine connection impossible, or consider FOMO, fear of missing out. This isn't just social anxiety, it's existential dread disguised as social media syndrome. Every Instagram story, every Facebook event, every LinkedIn achievement represents a life you're not living. A choice you didn't make, a version of yourself you rejected. And because the feed is infinite, the reminder of your unchosen lives is constant. You're not afraid of missing a party. You're afraid of missing your own potential. You're afraid that somewhere in the infinite possibility space, there's a better version of you, and you chose wrong. But let's go deeper, because there's something even more troubling beneath the surface. The choices we think we're making freely, are they actually free? Or are they curated illusions of freedom? Consider this. You open Netflix, thousands of options, infinite choice. Except, the algorithm has already decided what you'll see. Your choices are pre-filtered, based on what people like you have chosen before. You're not choosing freely, you're choosing from a menu designed to feel infinite, while actually being carefully constrained. The same is true for your social media feed, your shopping recommendations, your news articles, your music playlists. You think you're exercising radical freedom. Actually, you're navigating an invisible maze designed by machine learning algorithms optimizing for engagement. And here's where it gets philosophically interesting. This might actually be a relief, because true infinite choice, genuine radical freedom, is unbearable. Sartre knew this. He talked about the anguish of freedom, the vertigo of unlimited possibility. So perhaps we've unconsciously created systems that give us the feeling of infinite choice, while actually providing comfortable constraints. We've built algorithmic guardrails that protect us from the full weight of our own freedom. But here's the problem. These constraints aren't meaningful. They're not chosen. They're not connected to values or purpose or identity. They're just optimized. For clicks, for engagement, for profit. We've escaped the burden of infinite choice by accepting the tyranny of algorithmic curation. We've traded existential freedom for computational convenience, and in the process, we've lost something essential: the ability to create meaning through genuine limitation. So what do we do? How do we find meaning in an age of infinite choice? I want to propose something that might sound almost heretical in our culture of optimization: the philosophy of good enough. Barry Schwartz calls this satisficing, a combination of satisfy and suffice. Instead of searching for the optimal choice, you search for a choice that meets your criteria. Once you find it, you stop looking. You commit. Not because it's perfect, not because it's the best, but because it's good enough. And because the search itself has become the enemy of meaning. This isn't settling, this is wisdom. This is understanding that the perfect is the enemy of the good, and the optimal is the enemy of the meaningful. Let me tell you about a decision I made 15 years ago. I was living in Berlin, freelancing, with complete freedom. I could work from anywhere, do anything, be anyone. And I was miserable. So I did something radical. I imposed constraints on myself. I decided to spend 1 full year in a small village in Portugal. 1 year, one place, no optimization, no exit strategy, just commitment. And something extraordinary happened. Meaning emerged. Not from having more options, but from having fewer. Not from keeping my options open, but from closing them deliberately. When I couldn't leave, I had to engage. When I couldn't optimize, I had to appreciate. When I couldn't keep searching, I had to find depth instead of breadth. This is the paradox at the heart of meaningful life. Constraints create meaning. Limitations generate depth. Boundaries produce identity. Think about it. A painter with infinite colors creates chaos. A painter with 5 colors creates art. A poet with every word becomes incoherent. A poet with meter and rhyme creates beauty. A life with infinite options becomes scattered. A life with chosen constraints becomes purposeful. The question isn't, what are all my options? The question is, what constraints will I choose? Because freedom without chosen limitation isn't liberation, it's dissolution. So let me offer some practical wisdom. Not rules. I'm not interested in giving you another optimization framework. Just observations from a life spent thinking about these things. First, practice strategic ignorance. You don't need to know all your options. In fact, knowing all your options is often the problem. Sometimes the wisest choice is to stop researching, stop comparing, stop optimizing, and commit to what's in front of you. Close the laptop, delete the app, stop the search. Not because you've found perfection, but because the search itself has become toxic. Second, choose your constraints deliberately. Don't just accept the limitations imposed by algorithms or social pressure. Actively decide what boundaries will define your life. Third, embrace the wisdom of good enough. Train yourself to recognize when something meets your actual needs. Not your imagined ideal, but your real requirements for a meaningful life. Then stop looking, commit, invest. Go deep instead of wide. And finally, remember that every choice is also a rejection. This isn't tragic, it's necessary. You cannot live all possible lives. You cannot be all possible selves. The attempt to keep all options open is actually the choice to commit to nothing. Meaning doesn't come from maximizing options. It comes from choosing one path and walking it fully. from saying yes to one thing strongly enough that you can say no to everything else. I began this essay in a Tokyo supermarket, paralyzed by 47 varieties of coffee. Let me tell you how that story ended. I went back the next day. I closed my eyes. I reached out and grabbed one, anyone. I bought it without looking at the label. I went home and made it. Was it the best coffee I've ever had? No. Was it the optimal choice? Absolutely not. But here's what it was. It was enough. It was good. And more importantly, it was finished. The decision was made. The paralysis was broken. I could move on with my life. That coffee tasted like freedom. Not the freedom of infinite choice, but the freedom that comes from choosing and moving forward. The freedom that comes from commitment. We live in an age of unprecedented freedom, unprecedented possibility, unprecedented choice. And we're discovering something our grandparents knew intuitively. Freedom without constraint is not liberation, it's chaos. Sartre was right. We are condemned to be free. But he didn't tell us the second part. We are saved by our limitations. The crisis of meaning in our age isn't that we have too few choices. It's that we've forgotten how to stop choosing. We've forgotten that depth requires commitment, that meaning requires constraint, and that identity requires boundaries. The question isn't, what are all my options? The question is, what will I choose, fully, deeply, and without reservation? Because in the end, a life lived deeply in one direction is infinitely more meaningful than a life lived shallowly in all directions. Choose. Commit. Stop looking back. That's not settling, that's wisdom. I'm Adrian Vale. Thank you for thinking with me.